Our next guest is Stef McLoughlin, Commercial Manager at Lewes Football Club, the first gender-equal football club in the world. Stef and the rest of the team at Lewes FC are passionate about bringing in audiences who are not usually included in the typical football community. From breastfeeding facilities in the stands to serving up more healthy vegan options during match days, the club continues to broaden the horizons of football. We at Data Talks are proud to call Lewes FC a beloved customer of ours. I'm your host, Lorraine Moalusi. Join me as I talk to Stef about her role as commercial manager at Lewes FC and all the ways the club seeks to revolutionize football. Stef, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Lorraine.
Before we begin, I like to start our sessions with an icebreaker. Are you up for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your favorite quote, expression, or motto, and why is it your favorite?
So a quote which was introduced to me by our former team captain, Rianne Cleverly, last year. So we had a really difficult season last year and we had to rethink what we stand for as a club and we had to rethink our purpose in general. So I've got my phone and I'm going to read this because it's a little bit long. And it says, purpose is the sense that we are part of something bigger than ourselves, that we are needed, that we have something better ahead to work for. Purpose is what creates true happiness. Purpose is what Lewes FC is all about. So it's a little on the cheesy side, but at that point in our history, that quote meant a lot to us because, you know, whether you're winning or losing on the pitch, whether you're going through difficult moments, and we know football is incredibly stressful, the purpose and what you stand for and your beliefs and the impact that you are making, like that just means, in general, that just means so much to me and to like all of my colleagues in general.
Wonderful. A lot of people that I've interviewed on the podcast talk a lot about purpose and passion. And there's always this like theme of purpose is the thing that drives you, because not every day is going to be sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it's going to be storms. But when you have that purpose, you can weather the storms and kind of hang on to something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, sports, we don't very often talk about like the stressful side of working in sports. And, you know, sports gives you really big highs and it also gives you some terrible lows as well. So like hanging on to that purpose is, I think, really, really important doing what we do.
And the vulnerability as well, right? Because this is something that I've been thinking about when it comes to just sports in general, just comparing it to other industries. Maybe it's comparable to like the culture industry where you're really wearing your heart on your sleeve and everyone knows that you want to win, and the stakes just for the person themselves, like just personally, the stakes are really high because people just I sometimes watch clips of athletes or players just crying after a win or after a loss, all of that. And I guess the only explanation for why somebody would put themselves through that on such a public scale is just that purpose, because otherwise, why are you doing it?
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I suppose it takes like incredible motivation as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that one, Stef. You are the commercial manager at Lewes FC. I've just sung Lewes FC's praises and just about how you are the first gender equal club in the world. How did your journey with the club begin and just with football in general?
So I don't come from like a football background. I never in a million years thought that I would be working in football or spending this much time. Literally 90% of my life is focused on football at the moment. I am the sort of person that Lewes FC is trying to get along into our journey because I'm part of what we call the generation of unwelcome women in football. So women over the age of 35 who didn't necessarily grow up with all of the representation we now have in the media, even though representation in the media is still really low. I didn't grow up thinking that a job like this was for me, or what even watching football was for me. But I like doing things which are completely out of my comfort zone. And out of everything that I've done in my life, starting to play football in my 30s was literally the most terrifying experience I've ever been part of. It was honestly so scary going to play football for the first time as a complete beginner. But then that journey brought me here. Somehow working at Lewes Football Club, because then I got to know, when you're outside of the football world, you're not really aware of all of the inequality. You just take all of that for granted, really. Football's a men's game, and you're not, little things like teams not playing on the same pitches, the lack of resources, all of those things are not things that you're generally aware of unless you're really into football. So that made me really angry, and my anger brought me here. So, so it's great to have a job where I can be working in the women's game, bringing more funds into the women's game, helping to grow the game in my, in my small part of it, really.
What made you decide to play football at 30? What was that moment like?
I do lots of crazy things. I did an ultra run a few years ago. I did 100k. I ran from London to Brighton. I've done loads of little things like that. So football sort of fell into the whole, I'm going to do something out of my comfort zone. And then I met the most incredible group of women. I've got the loveliest friends that I've made out of football, and I feel really sorry that my younger self didn't have that. I feel sorry that the friends you make from playing team sports in general, I think it's like a bond like no other. So now now it's something I've done for quite a few years. I saw it was after the World Cup, so the World Cup before last Women's World Cup, so it was 2019. So that World Cup had a little bit more visibility, and I'd zoned in and out of it a little bit, and that's what probably put the idea into my head in the first place, which is why visibility is so important. We talk about visibility all the time, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. And a lot has happened during your time at Lewes FC over the last few months, from amazing things to some sort of not so amazing things. But what is the general sentiment internally of the club? Are we very excited for the future? How are we feeling? Because we mentioned the highs and lows of sports. How are we feeling generally at Lewes FC?
So obviously, relegation both on and off the pitch was super, super hard last season. And we're at a point now where it's almost off the pitch, and commercially it's almost completely irrelevant, because we've worked so hard in pre-season to bring fans in, to commercialize the space. And I'm proud to use the word commercialize, because at this point in time, commercializing women's sports is literally a form of activism. So we did, we worked really hard to bring new sponsors in, bring new fans in. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We were just doing the things that Lewes is best at, so finding our quirks and making sure they are shining. But yeah, I think we're, yesterday we had the most incredible day. We ran an event called Football, so a ball, football, with our new headline sponsors, Who Gives a Crap. So we invited people to come to the football wearing pre-loved gowns, so wedding dresses, prom dresses, tuxes, suits, anything which is occasion wear and therefore has a much higher carbon footprint than your everyday clothes. So we just invited them to come to watch Sunday football looking fabulous, basically. So we had a really good day. We had lots of photographers, we had paparazzi actors, we had DJs. So it was, it was just an amazing fan match day experience, and we're really lucky that we had support being able to do that. But that was our first home game, so our first home game started off the pitch. It started off really well. So we feel good at the moment. There's still a lot to do for the rest of the season. There's loads of more games to play, and hopefully more partners and more activations and events that we're running. But we had a really good, strong start, I think.
you've mentioned a couple of things that I would love for us to sort of dive into, but I will start off with the ball, the football. I think one of the things that I love personally about Lewes is that you're always thinking outside the box. You're always trying to find new ways of engaging with fans and with the football community. What was the thought process behind the whole pre-loved coming in your tux, coming in your best clothes, etc.? Because that's not something maybe you associate that with, like maybe going to the races, like horse racing and all that stuff, but you don't typically associate it with football. How did you? Yeah, what was the thought process behind that?
So we like to have fun with sustainability normally. So we've done things like clothes swaps in stadiums. So we've had like loads of women bring all of their clothes and then swap with other women. So we had like our stadium draped full of like clothes. We have a pitchside community garden, which again is a really fun space with lots of volunteers. So we're always looking for ways to make sustainability fun. So like the main focus around this was sustainability, and obviously we were bringing on a partner who's one of their focus, who gives a crap, is sustainability. So it's finding something. The main purpose behind it was finding something that we knew would work with fans, because Lewes as a town is on the eccentric side. People love dressing up. We've got like Bonfire, which is huge here, like, full of amazing costumes. So we knew the dressing up element would work. So thinking outside the box is important, but it's also important to make sure that coincides with the fans, or with, whichever group of fans you're trying to bring in. So we knew the dressing up, the sustainability, both for us and our new sponsors. And also just like the fun element, like women's football should be fun and joyful and expressive and different, and we should be thinking outside the box. So that worked really well. But the things that it did that I only realized while it was happening yesterday was two things that I really loved. One, it was all of like the little girls dressed up. So when I was, going back to my football journey, when I was a child, there was no opportunity to like still be girly, but still like football. Like if somebody had taken me to like a football match where I was able to wear a pretty dress and just roll with it, that might have been my into team sports. So there was loads of girls really enjoying, the fact that they could just wear pretty dresses and watch football. I think that was great. And the second thing it did was, like, in this country, culturally, any sports event where you go dressed up, where there is, a red carpet or whatever, is generally quite classist and inaccessible. So this gave people a chance to do that in a space where it's affordable, basically. So it's breaking down those barriers as well. And that was just really lovely to see.
I love this so much. You mentioned sustainability. Obviously, Lewes works with gender equality, and then you mentioned just this accessibility. Is it that just Lewes is passionate about just, I guess, revolutionizing the world, changing culture versus just changing football? Because the impact or the purpose-driven initiatives that you are driving, they extend beyond just what happens in football as an industry, but rather to just how we are as a culture. Is that a correct assessment of Lewis's?
Absolutely. And when we think of our like impact on the world with every single decision that we make, so while on the red carpet yesterday with our sponsor, like his name's David, he thought it was quite funny when I was like, oh, it's our friends from the fire service now. Oh, it's our friends from the police, because, we're working with loads of, as part of like our sisterships collective, which is groups or organizations that are trying to make the world better for girls and women. We work with loads of different organizations. So again, these are not typical organizations that you'd find in football, but they're people we are kind of bringing in. So hopefully, the impact extends to outside the football in general.
I love that so much. I love that. I really do. I really do. I think we could all benefit from thinking along those lines of what impact are we making just in general versus just impact or just trying to change this, like this small little corner that we exist in, and that imagery of little girls just coming in their dresses and knowing that they don't have to change themselves in order to fit the idea of what the audience should be, or football audience should be, is incredible. But you've mentioned Who Gives a Crap a couple of times, your latest sponsor. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about that? Because when I was reading up, I found an article from the Environment and Energy Leader website, and they call this move inspiring. And you were quoted as saying, "This is the perfect alignment of two purpose-driven organizations joining forces to create change." Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So in general, I think the thing that excites me the most about a brand like Who Gives a Crap coming into community football and women's football is, like, we talked about the event yesterday, which was an event we co-hosted with them, and that sort of symbolizes the fun and the joy and the atmosphere that you can have while watching community and women's football in general. And I think, like, even looking at yesterday, we may not have had the budgets to pull off everything that we did yesterday. Like, we need the help in general. Like, most football clubs at our level need the help to really bring out the atmosphere and the potential of women's football in general. And traditional brands are great, and getting like household names into sports is great, but I think having a brand whose main purpose is also changing the world. So they're a profit for purpose organization. So they give 50% of their profit to creating better water systems and doing things like building toilets in the places in the world that need it most. So we're going to be helping out with their fundraising as well as part of our Impact on the World pillar. And that's obviously, like, it's a women's issue as well, because it's women who are predominantly affected by not having proper resources, water resources and toilets, because it's girls who miss going to school when they don't have toilets once a month. There's more, you're more at risk of violence if you're a woman and there's, no toilet. So, it made sense for Equality FC to be joining. Equality FC is what we're known as, to be joining that journey, and to be finding a partner that really truly does want to change the world. I mean, not every partner would have thought it was a great idea to have a ball on the first day of the season. You know what I mean? That takes a certain amount of bravery, and we identify as being bold and brave. So when you find partners who share similar, not just brand guidelines, because they're not just brand guidelines, they're how we run the club, I feel that's really special. And literally, we only launched 3 weeks ago and we've already done so much. So it's, we need more exciting brands like Who Gives a Crap in the space, not just within Lewes, but within, the entire football pyramid, really.
And it's also nice to see new faces in the football sponsorship instead of the same old brands every time coming in with the same mandates, coming in with the same sort of purpose, so to speak. So it's really great to see Who Gives a Crap coming in. And you mentioned something earlier about commercialization, and as well, like you mentioned that this time around during the pre-season you had to commercialize and you had to bring in the sponsor. Can you talk us through the decision to commercialize? Why the pre-season particularly? How come it was only happening this time, or why did you decide to do it this time?
So we were in between sponsors this season. So we're always looking for what I call like commercial dead space, really. So things which we're not really like when it comes to sponsorship, we're not really like a badging on club. We don't do things. You can get a pitch board if you want to, but like we're always looking for things that we can make partnerships really meaningful, again, with like impact or things we're doing in fans. So we like to think outside the box with it. So there was some what I would call commercial dead space, because we were in between front of shirt partners. And we'd also come out of a season where we'd just been relegated, and we had to show the world that we were still the same Lewes FC. You can still come here, you can still drink your cocktails, because we're quite famous for cocktails at the football. You can still do all of the things that you normally do at Lewes FC within pre-season. So that was commercial dead space we couldn't really ignore, because it was there and we had to use it. We also had the opportunity to work with an amazing feminist pop artist called Charlotte Colbert, who got to know the club, fell in love with it, and wanted to somehow work with us and do some sort of project. So pre-season was the perfect time to be working with her, because we hadn't launched our headline sponsors yet. So it was, sometimes you look at the landscape and then it's like a bit of a jigsaw and you're putting all the pieces together. So that's what it was really at pre-season. So that worked really well. We had from like an equality feminist perspective, we were selling merch which was specifically made for our women fans for the first time. So our women were wearing shirts where the design was made specifically for them, because Charlotte specifically wanted to work with our women's team. And then we created a merch line, which was really fun and really exciting. And then all of that led to Kate Nash writing a song about the campaign we were running, just off her own back. So the song isn't out yet, but we saw the video for the first time a couple of days ago, and it looks amazing. So I don't know, sometimes these things just, spiral out of control and happen organically, which is really beautiful.
Things fall into place and you're able to complete the puzzle and easily see that, okay, that piece fits here, that piece doesn't quite fit. Oh, that's amazing. And it probably has a lot, it has a lot to do with the purpose, right? Because once the purpose is clear, it's very easy to spot what fits into that purpose and what doesn't fit into that purpose.
Yeah.
One thing that separates Lewes FC from other clubs is that you are not attached to a big name male club, so you have had to work hard for your success, one might say. How has the transition of playing in the third league for the club thus far in terms of financial and commercial activities been? Has it been, I guess one could assume that if a club that's attached to another big brand gets relegated, they might get a buffer from somewhere. But you guys don't have that. How has that transition been financially and commercially?
So in a way, it's what being in the football ecosystem has taught us in the last few months. Like, in a way, it's kind of a bit of a blessing that we're not getting, outside help and outside resources, because we have to work for everything literally pound for pound. And then when you have to do that is when you're having to think outside the box, when you're having to invite people wearing ball gowns, you're having to commercialize dead space. And I feel financial sustainability in women's sports for women's football teams and clubs is so important at the moment. It's so important that we don't I don't want to use the word lazy, because nobody is in this industry, but it's really important to just be our own selves and keep building upon building so that we are eventually financially sustainable. I mean, the journey we are on is not an easy one. We're a very, very, very small team. We do so much. We work so many hours. But at the end of the day, we feel proud that what we are building, we've done ourselves and nobody's given it to us. So yeah.
And maybe as well, being unaffiliated comes with a certain level of freedom as well, because we sometimes maybe focus on the challenges of not having support of a big brand. But what have been some of the opportunities and some of the, we are really glad to be in the position that we're in moments?
I mean, even with working with a partner like Who Gives a Crap and all of the, wackier ideas that we've brainstormed, it's amazing that we can make those decisions within like a small team of people. Do you know what I mean? Like we don't, our brand guidelines are literally bold and brave. Like there's not, as long as we're sticking to our values and we're not doing anything which is harming our fans or doing anything which is, you know, bad for the environment, or we literally, the freedom that we have, sponsorship wise, fan engagement wise, is huge. So, you know, it's amazing because, you know, the joy and the fun that we spoke about at the start of this call, like you need to have that freedom for that to happen. So yeah.
Apart from finding out of the box ways to engage with audiences, you have also been working with supporter data, which is something that I mentioned at the beginning, that we work together. And you've been simply doing that so that you're reaching out to the right people and you're reaching them with the right message. We have been working together coming on 2 years now in December. How instrumental would you say, or how complementary would you say using data has been to your overall supporter strategy? Or how important is using supporter data in general to clubs that are wanting to reach equality, clubs that are wanting to boost their women's side, etc.?
I think with Lewes's mission of bringing in people who are not your traditional football fans, I feel it's been helpful with recognizing, for instance, whenever we run massive big events. So, for instance, when we run Veganuary, that's like a really big game for us. Or, you know, whenever we've done more football matches, which were more events rather than, you know, your general football match, like finding those customers which do not come every week and who come for like just events, for instance, we've been able to grow that base, if that makes sense. So the data has helped with finding people who are not your general football fan, which is what we are trying to achieve.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You have worked with so many, like I'm very in awe of all the different brands that you work with. And I remember, because the previous Women's World Cup, Zero was one of the sponsors. And I remember just seeing Zero and then just remembering, oh, they sponsor Lewes FC. Oh. What is the strategy, for lack of a better word? Because what I love about Lewes is that on paper, it is a small club from a small city, a small town in the UK. So you don't have the sort of the advantage of population, advantage of being in London, advantage of all those things. So on paper, the brands that you're working with, you kind of shouldn't on paper.
Yeah.
But the paper's been ripped and it's been like thrown in the trash. What has been the strategy for just dreaming big and just going out there and not letting sort of the boundaries or the sort of the ceilings keep you down?
I think for me personally, it's knowing our worth. So it's, you know, whenever we're speaking to big brands or any brands in general, even small brands, it's knowing our value and knowing our worth and not really allowing anyone to knock that. So we're very, very, very proud of what we've built and what the people before me have built. Lewes is built by loads of people. We have 2,500 owners in 41 countries, and there's so many people who've left their mark on this club. This club is not a one-person job. But for me personally, like strategy-wise, it is literally knowing our worth, how special we are, the things we've done which are amazing, and yeah, so it is literally knowing our worth.
And if somebody working within a sports organization that's maybe tiny, or it's a women's sports club, or an organization that one would expect to be sort of limited in their outcomes and what they achieve, if you were to give that person advice, apart from know your worth, what maybe 2 or 3 pieces of advice would you give that person to reach their sort of their goals?
So I think an issue that we have in football, not just within smaller teams, but also within like larger teams, is not many clubs have a USP. So but you can call that USP your purpose. But in general, I think knowing what you stand for, knowing what differentiates you from everyone else is so like rare, and there aren't that many teams that I can think of that have extremely clear USPs that aren't general ones that everybody else has, but like really specific things that the club stands for. And I think once you have that, then it's easy to align to the people you want to align to. So for instance, Who Gives a Crap was my absolute favorite dream. Like I literally manifested it. Like it was, like they're just so similar to us. That there was somebody, an agency, a guy called Gary Link, who I knew them, and literally did not stop until like I got that introduction, because I knew that the alignment was so perfect. And the first deck that I prepared for them literally took an hour to do, because it was just so easy. So having that clear USP and knowing where you stand, that makes it easier to then align to other people, because you need allies, whether those allies are going to be brands, whether they're going to be supporter groups, whether it's going to be media, like if you know your purpose, then you start building your allies. And then that's when you grow. So wonderful. I think that's the main bit of advice that I would give.
Wonderful. And if anyone would love to reach out to you and connect to you after listening to this podcast, where can they do that?
You're very welcome to link with me on LinkedIn using my name.
Yeah. We will have a link into your LinkedIn in the description box. Thank you so much, Steph, for a wonderful, wonderful conversation. And we're always rooting for Lewes and the entire team.
Thank you so much, Lorraine, and Data Talks.